Welcome to TaylorMade with Nancy. I'm Nancy Taylor and I'm an independent Stampin' Up demonstrator. Today I'm going to show you how I made these 7 bright and beautiful cards using Stampin' Up's Circle Sayings bundle. You can find out more about the bundle on page 17 of the new annual catalog. As you will see, there are sentiments for multiple occasions. The bundle comes with the Circle Sayings photopolymer stamp set, as well as the 2 3/8 of an inch circle punch. For today's workshop, I'm also going to be using our new basic 3D embossing folders that come as a set of 3. We're going to use each of these 3 embossing folders today. We're also going to be using the painted texture 3D embossing folder, as well as the new Countryside Blossoms embossing folder. And don't worry if you don't have these exact folders. You can use whatever type of folder you like. If you want to substitute some of the designs and use DSP instead, you can do that as well. Today's workshop is really designed to be a workshop that will teach you some basic card making skills. We're also going to use the new 3 sheer ribbon combo pack featuring Stampin' Up's new colors, Bubble Bath, Lemon Lolly, and Azure Afternoon. I designed this workshop in large part because I have a new team member named Jamie, and this is her first time. She's new to Stampin' Up, and I recommended that she get this set as a really great set for beginners because there are just so many different kinds of cards you can make. So I hope you're going to have a lot of fun making these cards with me. I think you're going to learn some new techniques. You're going to learn some basic card making, and I hope you enjoy it. The colors that we're going to be using for today's workshop, and it's okay if you don't have these exact colors, but just if you're following along at home, are Flirty Flamingo, Azure Afternoon, Misty Moonlight, Boho Blue, and Wild Wheat. And we're also going to be using a number of blends for my favorite card, which we're going to save the best for last. So as I mentioned, a large part of today's class is going to be some basic card making techniques and also some different ways that you can use this set. When I first saw this set, I was a little intimidated by the fact that everything went in a circle, and I thought to myself, I don't know how many cards I can make that just have a circle on top. So I really wanted to challenge myself to show some different ways that you could use this set to make things that maybe you wouldn't think of making right away. The very first card that we're going to make is what I think is probably the most basic of the cards that I've designed, which is a piece of DSP, some ribbon, and a circle. So whenever you're making a card, these are the numbers that you really want to keep in mind. So when you're making the card base, remember that our paper is 8.5 by 11. So we can take one piece of 8.5 by 11 paper, and depending on which way we cut it, get 2 card bases. And the numbers to remember for the card base are 5.5 by 4.25. So let's start by taking our paper. We're going to make a card that opens horizontally. So we're going to hold the paper long ways, and we're going to cut at 5.5. Now I keep a piece of washi tape on my cutter just to help make sure that I always know exactly where to start from. I just find it helpful. And if you have the Stampin' Up paper trimmer, you'll see that we have 2 blades, a dark blade for cutting and a light blade for scoring. So we cut at 5.5, we're gonna score at 4.25. And that is going to give us our card base. And if you have a bone folder, I highly recommend this is something you invest in. It will help you get a very flat front of a card that stays closed, and it just gives it a nice crisp fold. So we've done that. The next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna pick out our DSP, and I wanted to show you that if this is not your cup of tea, there are other ways you can do this, and if you don't have these colors or these ribbons, you can use whatever DSP you want. So I'll just go ahead and just pick a random piece of DSP, make the card a little different this time. I wanted to mention that this workshop features the bright and beautiful DSP. It is double-sided 6 by 6 inch paper, and it has some really beautiful designs. So let's go ahead and do something a little bit different, and I'll go ahead and use our striped DSP. So what we're gonna do, and this is the next set of numbers that I want you to remember, and that is 5.25 by 4 inches. So when you're doing a standard card, not a fun fold, just a standard card where you get 2 from one sheet of 8.5 by 11 paper, the numbers to remember are 5.25 by 4, and we're gonna start, first you're gonna figure out which way you want your paper to go. So do we want the pattern to go this way, or do we want the pattern to go this way? I'm gonna do it this way, so that's my long edge. So I'm gonna go ahead and cut at 4 inches to start with. And then I'm gonna turn it, and sometimes I like to turn it this way, so this way I'm cutting off that rough part. And then the next cut I'm gonna make is 5 1/4. And that is gonna give me a 1/4 inch border, so that when I layer my paper, I'm getting a little bit of room all the way around. So I'm gonna go ahead and move our trimmer away. And now we're gonna talk about ribbon. So for these 2 cards, I used our boho blue ribbon, which we're gonna see featured in another card later, and I used our lemon lolly. For this one, I will go ahead and use bubble bath because I haven't used that one in this video. And we're gonna make sure that you get it so that it will wrap around. Take some ribbon, whatever ribbon you're using, and cut it. We're gonna turn your paper upside down, and we're gonna figure out where we want our ribbon to go. So I wanted it to be right in the center. This is one of those tricks for making a card. You can kind of line it up, and we could use our grid paper to figure out, like, depending on how precise you want it to be, to make sure it's right in the center and that the lines all line up. And what we're gonna do is we're literally gonna take some Scotch tape. Where's my Scotch tape? I know I had it here. Where did I put it? And we're going to just sneak a little piece of Scotch tape, and don't worry, you're not going to be able to see this. And we're going to tape down our ribbon. Make sure that we get it even. Use that grid paper. It's not just there to protect our surfaces. And then turn it over, make sure it's where you like it. Move it around a little bit if needed. I think that looks good. And then we're going to figure out how to adhere our card front to our card base. Now, there are different ways that you can do this. One of the ways that I've been using, which I just find is really helpful, is to use dimensionals and go ahead and pop it up on dimensionals. So these are our Stampin' dimensionals. I like to take 4 of them and put 1 in each corner, just to give it a little more pop, since this is kind of a flat card. And we're just gonna kind of pop it up. And you're gonna see we're gonna be doing this for most of the cards we're making today. And then you take off the stickers, make sure they're all sticky, and you're gonna use your grid paper again to help line it up, to try to get it as centered as you can. And then when you like where it is, kind of move it around a little bit. When you like where it is, go ahead and just kind of press down on those dimensionals, and now it's stuck down there. So now comes the Stampin' part, which I know we've all been waiting for. So we're gonna go ahead and get a 3 inch by 3 inch piece of scrap white. We're gonna go ahead and get our cupcake and our Celebrate, or whatever stamp you want to use for this set. Maybe you want to use a different one, but they are all designed to fit within the circle punch. So I recommend stamping first and then punching, but you may want to try it the other way, where you punch and then stamp into the circle. I'm not going to judge. Do it the way you want. I'm going to start with, oh, I forgot our bubble bath. Sorry about that. I'm going to start with our bubble bath. And I am going to, let's see, so you can either do it the same color or you could do it monochromatic. Since this is the kit that those of you who subscribed are getting, I'll go ahead and stick with the traditional design. So depending on which way you want to do it, you can stamp the sentiment first, or you can stamp the cupcake first, whichever way you think is easier. Go ahead and stamp that. And if you are fortunate enough to have a chamois, this is something that helps you to, you wet this and you clean off your stamps. You can see my chamois is well loved, but it continues to work. And then next you're going to get your cupcake. And I highly recommend using the B block for this. It just, to me, makes it more fun to use. And go ahead and get your stamp inky till you can see the ink kind of coming through. Especially with this bubble bath, you really just want to make sure it's coated on there. And then again, use your grid paper and try to get it as centered as you can. And press down. Try not to rock your stamp and lift straight up. And there you go. We've got our sentiment stamped. Don't forget to clean off your stamps so that you don't get ink all over the place. We're going to be using that stamp again later. And next, we're going to take our circle punch. And for those of you who have never used our punches before, you're going to start by unlocking the punch. And now it's opened. And you're going to use the punch upside down. So you're going to put what you just made in the circle and kind of wiggle it around until you get it where you like it. When you think it's centered enough, when you have the right border, go ahead and squeeze. And there you go. Get your scrap piece, save it if you think you might use it. And we've got the piece that we wanted. Let's go ahead and close our ink so we don't get ink everywhere. And now we're going to take this, we're going to turn it over. And what I like to do for this is use our dimensionals. And I like to use 2 dimensionals for this. I like to use one at the top and one at the bottom. This way it kind of just goes and straddles our ribbon. If you find that you've put it a little too close to the edge, you can just peel it off gently. It won't rip the paper. And then we're going to line up our card again on our grid paper. And we're going to get this where we want it. And when we like where it is, move it around so you get it where you want it. I'm going to press down on those dimensionals. And there you go. Our first card is done. Oh, we got to put that inside piece in. And so as I mentioned, we're going to use, these are our magic numbers for the inside piece or the cover piece. Cut a 5 1/4 by 4 inch piece of white cardstock. And now I'm going to show you some different ways that you can do this. So 2 of our most popular products for adhesive are our Tombow liquid glue and our Stampin' Seal. I prefer Stampin' Seal, but for those of you who are newer to card making, you may prefer the glue. And the reason is it's a little more forgiving, but that's if you know how to use it properly. So one of the things you want to do is make sure you peel off any excess glue that's at the top. You want to hold your glue until, squeeze it just a little bit until you start to see the white bubble. Once you see that white bubble, you know you're ready to go. So what you want to do is you want to come about at least a 1/2 inch in, and you don't need much glue. So go ahead and just make a rectangle if you want to put a little more in here. You don't need a lot of glue. You don't want it to bleed through the paper. And then what you're going to do is, you want to use your grid paper, kind of line it up so that you're able to center it. And because you didn't put the glue all the way at the edge, you know that if you lay your paper down and it's not where you want it, it's a little bit forgiving. So you could move it around a little bit until it's where you want it. And when you get it where you want it, kind of like we did with our dimensionals, just kind of give it a little press. And now, there you go. And one of the fun things about this set is we had Celebrate here. We have another happy birthday stamp that comes with this set, which we're going to be using in our colorful cupcake card. But let's say you want to add a little bit of something else to the card. Let's say you want to stamp the inside. This is a card where maybe you can just take the happy birthday stamp and go ahead and kind of stamp it right in the middle. This way then you write a little birthday message. Maybe you want to put something at the bottom. Another thing that sometimes we like to do is take, so we know that this is 4 inches on the bottom. So go ahead and take a 4-inch piece of paper and just trim it down. And then take our glue, or I'll show you how to use our tape runner. Tape runner, you want to kind of wait until you get it sticky and then start a little bit off the edge, pull it until you're a little off the edge, and then lift it straight up. And then kind of just center it at the bottom of the page, wherever you want it. This is actually a trick I really like to use when I don't like how I've centered my paper. If I've made it a little too, I've showed a little too much at the bottom, then I'll maybe move it down a little bit to cover up a little more, or vice versa. And then when you like where it is, you press down, and there you go. We've got a really fun, colorful birthday card. So card number 1 is done. Next card we're going to make is a vertical fold card using our thinking of you sentiment. We're going to use Azure Afternoon and Misty Moonlight, or if you don't have these colors, whatever blue you want. One of the things I wanted to note is that one of the benefits of using Stampin' Up! Products is all of our colors match. So if you're using the Azure Afternoon ink, it's going to be the same exact color as the ribbon and the same exact color as the paper. We're going to start with an 8.5 and 11-inch piece. The numbers that we have to remember are 5.5 and 4 1/4. Since we're making a vertical fold card, instead of cutting it horizontally, we're going to cut it vertically. And so instead of starting at 5.5, that's where we're going to score, and we're going to cut at 4 1/4. And that will give us 2 pieces of equally sized paper to make 2 cards out of. We're going to set one of these aside because we're going to use it later for our fun fold version of this Thinking of You card. And we're going to score this using our scoring blade at 5.5. Get our card folded. And if you have your bone folder, go ahead and use that to get a nice crisp fold. I like to turn mine over. And then we're going to go ahead and get our DSP. Probably my favorite DSP that comes in Bright and Beautiful is this paper. I know the back has a fun birthday pattern, but I love how this looks like an ocean. And as soon as I got this set, I knew I needed to use it to make this card. So you want to think about the alignment of, I like the little white because it kind of looks like the waves, where you want it as you're cutting the card. But go ahead and we're going to, again, use those same dimensions we used before for the white inside piece, which is 4 inches by 5 1/4. So since we're going to make it go up and down, I'm going to start with 4 inches. And I'm going to cut, save that paper for later. And we'll actually be using the paper. This next piece that you're going to cut, if you're making both of these ocean cards, you're going to want to hold on to that piece because we're going to use it later. And so we said we cut that at 4, so now 5 1/4 is our next cut. And that is going to give us, again, hold on to this little piece, set it aside. We can go ahead and move our trimmer. Having a little technical difficulty with mine. And then we're going to not forget to use our ribbon. So let's go ahead and get our ribbon. We want to have just enough to tuck under the side of the card, like we did before. And so we're going to turn it over. For this one, I just wanted to do something a little different, so I set it up here. If you want to do it like the last card and set it in the middle, that's fine. Either way, go ahead and use your grid paper to just help get it lined up, just to make sure it's nice and even. You want to line up the top of your card with one of those lines. Get our Scotch tape. And once you have your ribbon where you want it, so I'm going to make mine go higher up. Gonna kind of just literally leave 1 or 2, so I guess 2 boxes from the top, and then I'm gonna just use a little bit of tape. Tape it down. Same thing on this side. Line it up. Get it on that line as best as we can. You could always fix it if it's not what we want. Turn it over. I like that. And then we're going to go ahead, turn our paper over. You can glue it down using the glue trick that we did earlier, or you can go ahead and use my dimensionals method and use 1 at each corner, just a little bit off the side, just to pop it up a little bit. And then go ahead and take off the covers. I've got this really cute little pop-up trash can from Stampin' Up that I like to use to get rid of all these little paper pieces, just to get them out of my way. It's a very cute item, very handy to have. Go ahead and line your paper up on your grid paper, get it centered as you can, and when you like where it is, move it around if you need to. Go ahead and just press down. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. Now we're going to go ahead and take our white 3x3 scrap, and we're going to start this time with our ocean. And we're going to get our Azure Afternoon ink. And we're going to go ahead and get it just centered. It doesn't have to be perfect. And then we're going to clean the stamp off, and we're going to get our sentiment piece. And we're going to stamp the sentiment using Misty Moonlight, which has become probably one of my favorite Stampin' Up! New colors. It wasn't in color, now it's a permanent color. Go ahead and use your grid paper to kind of line it up and just kind of have it go over the top, however much space you want to leave. Just don't go too far and just stamp it over there. I did not use Misty Moonlight. I used Azure Afternoon. It's been that kind of day, but it's okay. We're going to just power through. We're going to do the same thing we did before, which is move our paper inside of our circle punch until we get it where we want it. And then once it's in there, centered the way we want it, we're going to pop it out. Now, really quickly, I wanted to show you a fun trick before we assemble this card. There is another way. Obviously, you can stamp this image and then you can color it in, but there's another fun trick that I've really enjoyed using for this card, and that is to use our Stampin' Blends, our Stampin' Right markers. So I have Tahitian Tide, which is one of our in colors. It's not Azure Afternoon, but I think it can work. And I also have our Wild Wheat Stampin' Right marker. So if you don't know the trick of the Stampin' Right markers, you're in for a treat. If you've tuned into some of my other workshops, you already know that this is something I really love to do. So what we're gonna do is let's make sure we have our cleaned off ocean stamps. Let me make sure mine is actually clean this time. Make sure it's dry from when you cleaned it off. Okay, so what you're gonna do is you're gonna take your stamp and you're gonna get whatever Stampin' Right markers you want, and you're going to take the long end and go ahead and color in the ocean. You don't have to do it carefully. You just kind of scribble on there till you see that you've got it covered. Oops. Doesn't have to be perfect. If you have like a paper towel or a baby wipe, I really like to use baby wipes to clean my stamps when I don't know where my chamois is. You can go ahead, if you go a little astray and you want to get it perfect, just go ahead and, you know, brush off. I got a little bit on the sun. And then you're going to take your Azure Afternoon and you're going to color in the sun rays. I don't know what I just said, but I meant wild wheat. And again, you're just doing the same thing, just coloring all the sun rays in. And you can use whatever colors you like. This is just what I like to do. It doesn't have to be perfect. You could even go over some of what you already colored with the ocean color, Tahitian Tide or whatever you're using. And then once you have it pretty inky, you're gonna take your stamp and you're gonna huff on it. You're literally gonna hold it up to your mouth, blow some warm breath on it, and that is gonna help the color to just get ready to be stamped. Ready? Really weird, but it's gonna come out, you'll see. And then you're gonna take it and you're gonna press down, hold it there, and then lift straight up, and there you go. You have one stamp that was colored with multiple colors and just kind of a cool image. So I forgot, and then this will clean right off using your chamois or baby wipes, whatever you're using. So make sure you clean it off. Sometimes I like to just blot it just to make sure that I got everything off. Okay. We're gonna be using that one again later, so I will check on it when the time comes. And then I'm gonna actually use Misty Moonlight this time since I really wanted you guys to see that nice blend of two colors. Actually, no, sorry. So we're gonna use Azure Afternoon just to tie in the colors. And we're gonna go ahead and get that sentiment back, thinking of you. And we're gonna stamp it right above the sun. press down, straight up. There we go. Now it's going to tie all these colors in together. We're going to do the same thing we did last time. And we're going to use our circle punch, turn it upside down, get it in there, center it, punch, and then going to do the same thing we did last time. Now this time we're not straddling the ribbon, so if you want to make it a little more stable and use 4 dimensionals, you can go ahead and do that. So go ahead and put them on here. And then when you're ready to put it down, just again, use your grid paper, line it up, figure out where you want it to go, figure out where you think it looks best, wanted all those ocean parts to show, kind of just press down. And there you go. If you want to add a white inside piece, you can, but card number 2 is done. The next card we're going to make is our warm hello card. And this is the first card that we're doing today, which is going to feature one of our embossing folders. So let's go ahead and get rid of our Stampin' Up markers. We are going to start with a piece of boho blue, but we're going to go ahead and cut our our horizontal card base, 5.5 by 4 1/4, and our 5 1/4 by 4 inch piece. We're going to take that 5 1/4 by 4 inch piece, and we're going to use our Basics 3D embossing folders. So as I said, this is a set of 3. This is really good for a beginner if you just got the Stampin' Emboss, cut and emboss machine. For this one, I just thought this kind of looked like starfish. I don't know. It just made me think of the ocean. You want to make sure to use the line on the embossing folder to line up the paper and get it even. And run it through your stamp cut and emboss machine using the 1 4 plate. And then you open it up. And we have a beautifully embossed card front. And then we want to get our twine. We just want to make sure that it goes around twice. So that's how I like to do it. And then I'm going to snip it. Kind of just center it wherever it is we want it to go, whether you want it to be kind of in the middle. I just pick where I'm going to go. I'm going to try to go under a row of the starfish and pull it. I kind of wanted it to crisscross a little bit. And then I'm going to just turn it over and I'm going to use a little bit of tape to kind of tape down those edges. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, and you will have some ability to change it around if you don't like it once you see what it looks like. But just getting a basic idea for where it's going to go. You could always reposition it if you don't like it. And now this is very simple. We're going to go ahead and take our 4 dimensionals. We're going to put the 4 dimensionals in each corner. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then we're going to, again, line up our paper on our grid paper, get it where we want it, a little bit, kind of push down when we're ready. Then we're going to go ahead, get our 3 inch by 3 inch piece of white scrap. And for this card, I used Wild Wheat and Boho Blue. I really like a monochromatic look, can you tell? So we're going to use our seashell stamp. One of our colors is going to be, if you're following along, Boho Blue, and one of our colors is going to be Wild Wheat. So I'm actually going to try it this time just so that we have 2 examples. I'm going to go ahead and stamp my seashells and my starfish using Wild Wheat. Just kind of get it on there, press down, try not to rock it, lift straight up. And we're going to take our warm hello sentiment. For this one, I really like to use the B block. Just has a good feeling when you use it. And we're going to use our boho blue, or vice versa, depending on which way you decided to make it. Maybe you're waiting to see how it looks. You can decide. You can do it whatever way you like. And go ahead and line it up as much as helps you just to figure out where it's gonna go. When you're ready, stamp down. Since it's in a circle, it really is kind of forgiving. It doesn't have to be perfect. There you go. You can decide which one you think looks better. And then again, we're gonna take our punch. We're gonna line it up in there. When we get it where we want it, gonna give it a little punch, let it come out. We're gonna put our dimensionals on the back. So for this one, again, when I do ribbon, I like to just make it straddle. I don't necessarily think it needs the stability of 4, but if you wanna use them and you're not cheap with your dimensionals like I am, go ahead and use 4. And then again, just kind of line up your paper, figure out where you want it to go, depending on, I kind of like for the words to be in the center here, and then press down. If you want to put an inside piece in here, you can put a white inside piece, but either way, this card is done. The next card we're going to make is going to be our fun fold card that uses the Thinking of You set. So this, I find this card to be one of my favorite. It's a little challenging. It shows you a different way of using the punch. Instead of cutting out a stamped image and pasting it on top, we're gonna do something a little different, and it's our first fun fold. So since it's our first fun fold, let's go ahead and make the cuts together. We're going to start with a piece of Azure Afternoon. I know I told you earlier, for those following along with all the cards, to save the piece we had earlier because we're going to use it. If you have that, go ahead and use it. If you're starting from scratch with me, go ahead and get an 8.5 by 11-inch piece of paper. We are going to cut it as though we're doing a vertical fold, but just for our first cut. So that means we're going to cut it at 4 1/4. And then we're going to score it in 2 different places. Instead of how we did last time, which was scoring at 5 1/2, we're going to score it at 4 1/2 and then 5 1/2. And I'll show you why. So get our cutting blade out of the way. So 4 1/2 and then 5 1/2. And then you'll see it does do that fold because we did the 5 1/2 like we normally do, but we have this extra fold here. And we'll go ahead and burnish it using our bone folder if you have one, just to kind of get a good crisp fold. And what we're going to do is we are going to get our Azure Afternoon ribbon, and we're going to use a product that I really love to use whenever I make a fun fold. And I'm sure those of you familiar with making fun fold cards know all about this product. This is our tear and tape, and it's kind of like a dimensional in tape form where it has a cover and a sticky bottom. So what we're going to do is well, first, let me not get ahead of myself. Let's start with our scrap. So we talked about this earlier. If you made the last card with me, you hopefully saved this extra scrap of paper. If you didn't, then you should go ahead and cut a strip of DSP at 4 inches long and 3 1/4 inches wide. And then we're going to go ahead and just take our glue. Remember, we're going to squeeze it until we see a little bubble. Yep. And then we're going to go, I like to go kind of right down the middle, and then maybe just spread it out a little bit. The ribbon is going to kind of hold it down. And then you're going to take your paper. I like to turn it this way. And then remember, you do it in the middle, so it's forgiving, so you can move it around. See, I left a little too much room there. Kind of wiggle it around until it's as centered as you would like it to be. And then press down. If you get a little extra glue, that's okay. Okay, because we're going to cover that with the ribbon, so don't worry about that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to take our ribbon. Let me realign here. And we're going to do the same thing we've been doing, which is make sure we cut just enough to tuck it over the edges. And we're going to line up our ribbon where we think we want it. And we're going to turn it around. You can, again, use your grid paper if you really want to get it completely centered. You'll see that there are about 4 boxes for that middle section. You can kind of just wiggle it down to where it is under the first box. And we're going to get our Scotch tape. And we're gonna just use a little bit of Scotch tape and hold it down. And now we're going to use our tear and tape. So you're gonna go ahead and kind of just figure out how much you think you need. I like to keep it fully on the roll and just kind of center it, keep it a little bit off, like 1/4 of an inch off. And then when I get about 1/4 of an inch off, I just tear it, hence tear and tape. And then I push it down, I find the edge to peel it off, and just like a little sticker comes off and into my little polka dot trash can. And then we're going to press down this way. This helps it get, again, that nice fold. If you have your bone folder, go ahead and use that. And then there we go. So now we have our fun fold. And now we need our other pieces. So the dimensions for this card are here, if you want to jot them down. Our top piece is not going to be our standard cover piece. Our top piece is going to be Azure Afternoon, cut at 4 inches and 4 1/4 inches. And I like to turn it around so that I'm never keeping a raw edge if I don't have to. If there's a way to avoid a raw edge, I avoid it by just turning it around. All right, we have this piece, and now we're going to use the painted texture, if you have it, embossing folder, which is gonna give us that ocean-like texture for our card. I kind of just line it up like more to the top. We're gonna run this through the machine. Since it's a 3D folder, we are going to go ahead and use our number 1 and number 4 plates. And now we have this really beautiful embossed paper. And we're gonna take that and we're gonna go ahead and use our glue or a tape runner. I haven't used tape runner much in this video, so I'll go ahead and use it. Again, you wanna kind of turn it until it's sticky at the top. Start about 1/4 of an inch off, lift straight up. I just like to do the top and bottom, personally. And then we're gonna go ahead, get our paper lined up on our grid paper, and then figure out where to put it. And I like to try to line it up with our DSP strip because it is the same height. And then when you like where it is, just press down and it's there. And now I mentioned that we're gonna do something a little different with this card. So what we're gonna do is we're going to take our card. Now don't freak out, it is a little nerve-wracking, I'm not gonna lie. We're gonna take our card and we're gonna start at the edge. We're gonna figure out where you want your image to go. Now I like to have it as far to the edge as possible because I wanna make sure I have room to put to write inside the card. So you can do it either this way or this way, you know, kind of just figure out where you want it. Just make sure you could see a little bit of that edge so that you're not like cutting a hole in it. Make sure it's pushed all the way down so that you're getting it as close to the bottom, and then hold your breath, take a deep breath, and punch. It's gonna be okay. So we have our hole. You could save this for another project if you can think of something to do with it. Now we're gonna take our white inside piece. So our white inside piece for this is gonna be cut at 4 inches by 4 1/4, the same way we did our top piece. So in the interest of time, I've already gone ahead and cut that. Go ahead and take your tape runner or your glue and go ahead and get your adhesive on there and get it nice and centered. All right. Get it where you want it. Let me move it just a little bit. Okay. And there we go. And now we have our place where we're going to stamp our sentiment. Now you can do this any way you want. You can use the trick I taught you with the Stampin' Up markers, or you can just keep it simple and go ahead and use your Azure Afternoon. I'm going to go ahead and keep it simple for this one. Not make you watch me again do this. And now I'm glad this happened because this is the hazard of doing a card like this. You don't want to see this on your stamp. If you see this, go ahead and get your chamois and clean it off. There's multiple ways to stamp. So you can just rest it on top and then check and make sure you got good coverage, or you can kind of do tap, 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 or for some of our larger stamps, you can even take the ink and tap it this way. Whatever way you want to do it, the goal with a photopolymer stamp is just to make sure it's covered, and this one is covered. So we're gonna try to line this one up. If you're planning to use the sentiment like I did, to have thinking of you up there, try to get this stamp as close to the bottom of the circle as you can before you stamp it, but centered. And then again, press down and then straight up. I'm gonna go ahead and get my sentiment, and we're gonna use Misty Moonlight. Just really love that combination of colors, as I might have mentioned earlier. And we're gonna stamp our sentiment. If you're using it, maybe you wanna use a different sentiment. We're gonna tap, 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 and we're gonna maybe close your ink so you don't accidentally run your hand through it, because that would not be good. Rookie mistakes that I have definitely made. And then hold your breath, hope you got it all, and up you go, and there we are. And our card is done. Leaves you a little room to write something in, and I think that this card would really brighten someone's day. And I just wanted to show you another variation of that card that I made in case the ocean isn't your thing. And this gives you a sneak preview at one of the most exciting embossing folders I think Stampin' Up! Has ever offered, which is our Distress Tile 3D embossing folder. I'm going to be featuring this one in my upcoming fall workshop. It is just gorgeous. I used exactly the same technique to make this card, and I used our happy birthday and the little sun rays stamp that also comes with the circle saying set. Just wanted to show you that there are definitely different options you could use, and for this I used fresh freesia as my color. Okay, moving right along, we are down to our last 3 cards. And those cards are gonna be, first we're gonna do 2 versions of a thank you card using Flirty Flamingo. This was the color I picked out because I know that this is the color that Jamie got her first full-size ink from, and her first Stampin' Blend marker, which I hope she's enjoying. But I wanted to try to feature those colors. And then last but not least, my favorite card is gonna be what I think is the most difficult. We're saving the best for last. So very quickly, let's go through these 2 cards, and then we will get to our colorful cupcake card. So remember I told you we were going to find different ways of using our set. This card is going to be very similar to one of the first cards that we made, but this card is going to show you a new way of using the punch. And so before we punched right through, and then we had the white inside piece and we stamped on here. For this one, I'm going to show you a different way of doing this, where you can have an inset stamp and then have all the room in the world to write inside. So why don't we start with this one? We're gonna start with a piece of Flirty Flamingo, and we're gonna cut it into 2 card bases, which I've already gone ahead and done in the interest of time. So I cut our base and I used our dimensions to cut our cover piece. We're gonna run this through the machine using one of the other embossing folders from the Basics embossing set. And then we have our paper. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take our punch and we're gonna figure out where we wanna go, like we did last time. Do we wanna go this way? How close to the edge do we wanna be? When you figure out what that is, go ahead and give it a little punch. I just like to make sure I can see this side so that I'm not making a hole, and I wanna make sure that this piece is still there. Again, you can keep this for another project. Now we're gonna stamp our sentiment, and if you're making the next card along with me, you may wanna go ahead and stamp it twice just so that you're ready, because we're gonna be using the same exact colors. We're using Flirty Flamingo for the flowers, and we're using Misty Moonlight for the sentiment. So for the next card, you're gonna wanna go ahead and stamp this and then punch it out with your punch. But for this card, we're not gonna punch it out, and I'll show you why. So go ahead and stamp it. And you want to make sure, so now one of the things to keep in mind is that we're going to actually layer these 2. So you want to make sure that you are keeping enough room so that your flowers are going to fit in there, okay? So you don't want to do it right at the edge, and I'll show you why in a second. Put your thank you where you want it. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to turn it over, and we're going to just make sure we get it where we want it. We want to just kind of wiggle it around until it fits, okay? And so what we're going to do is kind of just peel back the edge, use a little bit of tape. I just like to use a little bit of tape and kind of just press it down. This paper, like, we're not going to be rough with it, but we know that we have room. So go ahead and run your tape runner over the top and press it down. And don't worry, this is going to hold itself together. So now we're going to turn it over. For this one, because we're holding down that other piece, I would recommend using your glue or using your Stampin' Seal instead of popping this one up on dimensionals. And go ahead and keep about 1/4 of an inch. Maybe you want to do some on the side. It's completely up to you, just to kind of hold it all down. But we're going to go ahead, line up our paper, and then we're going to center this where it goes. So till it's where you want it. Move it around if you need to. When you like where it is, press it down, and then go ahead and get your inside piece, which again, in case you forgot the dimensions, is 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. And go ahead and use whatever you're using to make that adhere. Get your inside piece in there. Maybe you want to take a piece of DSP and cut it at 4 inches and line it up at the bottom just to make it a little more colorful. Maybe you like it monochromatic like I do. But either way, this card is done. Gives you lots of room to write. And then the next version of this card we're going to make is very similar to the card we made earlier. If you haven't already, go ahead and stamp a second image and punch it out with the punch. But we're going to go ahead, we're going to take that other half of Flirty Flamingo that was cut at 5 1/2 and scored at 4 1/4. We're going to go ahead and get one of our card bases, which is cut at 5 1/4 and 4 inches. And we're going to run this through the Stamp Cut and Emboss machine using our Countryside Blossoms embossing folder. And then we have our beautifully embossed image. And that's so pretty. This is one of my favorites. And then we're going to not forget to put our ribbon on. Can you tell that I do this often? Now, the ribbon that I'm using for this card is one of my favorite ribbons. This is our boho blue textured ribbon. So go ahead and cut just enough so that it will go over the edge. Figure out where you want it to go. Figure out what you want to be the top, what you want to be the bottom. The tulips are facing up, so that's how I like to do it. And I like to put it kind of going through that flower in the middle, just to try to keep it a little bit symmetrical. Maybe don't be as chintzy with your ribbon cutting as I am. Maybe don't cut it so close to the edge, but it's going to be okay. I'm not worried about it. Okay, just don't make sure that the tape is not showing. And you could always move it around a little bit. If you don't like exactly where you've put it, it should be fine. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to do the dimensional trick. We're going to pop up each of the 4 corners. So if you're making all of these cards with me today and you're a newbie, like I was not very long ago, you're getting a lot of practice. It's some of our basic card making techniques. Hopefully it's helping you to get comfortable with making these cards. If you subscribe to my workshop, you should already have everything pre-cut. If you're cutting it yourself, hopefully this video will give you what you need to know how to do that. I got one of our papers under there, okay? And then get it, use our grid paper to line it up. And get it as centered as you can. Can you believe we're almost done? And I'm really excited about the next card because it's going to feature our Stampin' Blends, which those of you who've done my workshops before know is my absolute favorite product to work with from Stampin' Up. If you have not done it before, if you've not used them before, and you're trying them today, hopefully you will see why. And go ahead and get your dimensionals where you want it. If you want to go to the edge, if you want to put it in the middle. I don't know why, I just like the idea of offsetting it. I'll offset it to this side since I didn't do that before, so you can see it two ways. And then if you want to put the white piece in, again, it's 4 inches by 5 1/4. You can put a white piece in so that you can write on it, but either way, you got two options of how to do this, or you can move it to whichever way you like. But this card is done. And now, as I said, we're about to do our final card, which is my favorite. For our final card, we are going to make what I call our colorful cupcake card. And this is featuring some colors that I just think would be perfect for a little girl. It is Pool Party, and we're going to be using, as I mentioned earlier, some of my favorite blends. We're going to be using Highland Heather. We're going to be using Flirty Flamingo. We're going to be using Bubble Bath. That's what I use for the icing. And then you can change these colors up if you don't like them, but what I used was Pool Party and Lemon Lolly. So let's get started. So first, and I'll put the dimensions here if anyone wants to jot those down, if you find that helpful. Let me clear out a space. Sorry, I'm making such a mess today. I have not been paying attention to my margins here, so I'm sorry about that. And I'm sorry, I seem to be losing my light. So apologize for the shadows, but try to work around them as best as we can. All right, no ribbons on this card. I'm not gonna lie, that makes me a little bit happy. Just stick with what I love, which is coloring. Okay, so we're gonna start with a basic card front that you can do either way, but I chose to do it horizontal fold. And then our cover piece, we're gonna run that through the Stamp, Cut, and Emboss machine using the last of our basic 3D embossing folders, which is our polka dots. There we go. And we're going to run it through. This is a 3D folder, so if you're using the Stamp, Cut, and Emboss machine, we're going to use the 1 and then the 4. And then here we go, the best part, opening it up and then seeing that beautifully embossed paper. I love it. I'm a huge fan of the full-size Stamp, Cut, and Emboss machine. If you do not have it, I highly recommend you get it. I'm going to turn this over. I'm going to go ahead and use our 4 dimensionals to pop this up. And use our grid paper to line it up as best as we can, just to try to get that 1/4 of an inch margin. And again, it's okay if it's not perfect. And if you really don't like what you did, don't remember, as long as you didn't push down, you should be okay with lifting it up and not ripping your paper. Just gonna, it's very forgiving. I want to get it just a little more to this side. And one of the nice things about this card is that if you're not happy with what you did, we're going to have a chance to kind of cover it up just a little bit, because we are going to be using a piece of white scrap. Well, not really scrap, but a piece of white. And then if you want to shift it a little over to kind of hide that you didn't get your paper exactly where you want it, that is a very useful trick. So for that strip, we're going to get 5 1/4 long and 1 1/2 inches wide. So go ahead and grab that. If you subscribe to the virtual workshop, you already have all the paper cut that you're going to need. Our strip to stamp our cupcakes on. And now for this piece, what we're going to do is we're going to take our adhesive, whether you're using glue or you're using your Stampin' Seal. And I'm going to go ahead, and for this one, I like to, again, you want to try to keep it off the edge so that you have room to wiggle it around. But I like to do 2 strips just to keep it a little more stable. And we're going to use our Memento Tuxedo Black. So whenever you're using Stampin' Blends, this is the best. It's not only the best black ink, but this is perfect for whenever you're using an alcohol marker. It's going to ensure that it doesn't run when you're coloring. So you're going to want to stamp 3. Now, if you have enough room on your paper and you really want to kind of play around with the colors before you decide what to do, go ahead and stamp as many as you can. Maybe color them all different, decide which ones you like, and then go ahead and just use the ones you like and stamp them. I'm going to go ahead and do 3. I'm going to try to stick to the color patterns that I already selected, but this is your chance to get creative and see how you would like it to look. Maybe these are not your favorite colors, so I'm not offended if you want to try something else. But let's go ahead and start by using our light bubble bath. And how I like to do it is kind of just, I like to go around the edges. And then I like to color in the middle. And then if you want to blend it, go ahead and take your dark bubble bath. And if you want to do some shadows, I like to kind of just go here and just figure out where I want those shadows to be. And if you want to really darken it and really blend it, go ahead and go back in with the light. Basically just color it until it's the way you like it. So I really like that. I'm going to leave that one that way. For the next one, I am going to I want the next one to be a little darker. I think for this card, maybe I'll just try to do like a gradation. So we can try something a little different. Maybe we go in with the dark bubble bath in the sides. Maybe even outline it with the dark bubble bath. And color it in. That's Flirty Flamingo. And then maybe just kind of go over it with the light on the sides until it's blended the way you want. I'm not sure how good the camera is showing it, but you'll see that it's 2 very different looks, even though we use the same exact 2 markers. And then finally, I'm gonna go ahead and use our dark Flirty Flamingo. And I'm gonna outline it. And then I'm going to go back in with our light Flirty Flamingo. And you want to kind of keep them moving while the ink is wet to get it nice and blendy. Go back in with the dark. And you kind of just work with it until you get the look that you want to get. Maybe you want it to have a lot of dimension, maybe you don't. Just know that the more times you go over it, the darker it's going to get. And you just basically learn how to stop when you get it to where you like it. I like it like this. So now I kind of just want to go back in with the colors that I didn't use. These are bubble baths, so I'm going to go in with my light Flirty Flamingo. And I like to use the long edge, but for this, we're doing a little more fine detail. You may want to use your bulleted edge. And actually do it on all 3. Light Flirty Flamingo. And then I'm going to go back over it with dark Flirty Flamingo. And again, you might want to use the bulleted edge. I just really like the long edge. Kind of just get it. At least for the cupcakes that have the light frosting, I liked the idea of having the dark cupcake. And then for this one, I'll put this one in the middle and see if that looks a little better. All right, so now you want to go ahead and get whatever colors you're going to do the wrappers. I'm going to stick with my original palette, and for those, I just kept it simple. I didn't really blend for these, but I used the light Lemon Lime Twist, I used the light Highland Heather, and I used dark Pool Party. So, as I said, I think I'm going to do the dark one in the middle for this one, and just kind of go ahead and kind of get around your edges. I just like to move quickly because I feel like if you move quickly with these, sometimes you get a better coverage. Okay, I like that. And then I'm gonna use my light Highland Heather. Okay. And then last but not least, I am going to use my light lemon lime twist. You can kind of just look at it, see if you like it. Make sure you go in and get those little places where the cupcake wrapper wraps around if you didn't get them the first time. Maybe use your bulleted edge here to get those little tiny places. And then one of the things that I really like to do here is use my Wink of Stella glitter brush. Make sure it's closed. And I just like the idea of making the cupcake wrappers a little bit shiny, kind of like that foil. And you can just move quickly. It dries right away, so you don't have to be worried about getting glitter everywhere. You're not going to glitter bomb yourself, I promise. And then take a quick look and see what you think. Oh, sorry. See all the glitter? Isn't that so pretty? All right, now we are going to fussy cut, which I know is not everybody's cup of tea, but I actually really enjoy it. So what I always recommend when you're going to fussy cut is start with the smallest paper you can start with because it's easier to manipulate. So I like to start to kind of come around the bottom. You want to leave a little bit of a white edge. If you want to start big, you could always go back in and make it smaller, but once you cut too close to the image, you're kind of stuck. So that's just my tip. But what you want to do is just kind of keep it moving. I'm not a big fan of stopping and starting. I just like to keep it moving. Just kind of turn the paper with one hand, turn the scissor with the other, kind of both hands working together. And I feel like when you do it that way, you get a better image. There you go. If you want to go back in and trim it a little bit, make it a little smaller, you could always do that on the edges. See, and I feel like that, I think that looks pretty good. So go ahead and let's fussy cut out the images. If you made this card and you used a different variation from what I used, I would love it if you would hashtag it TaylorMade with Nancy. I would just love to see what you guys are creating, and if you're making something, a variation of one of my designs, I would really love to see your take on it and what you did. Maybe you made the cupcakes chocolate. I thought about it, and I don't know why I didn't try, but maybe I will. Maybe one of you will make chocolate cupcake card and post it and inspire me to give it a try. But you can basically make this whatever colors you like. I think there's so many different things that you can do with this set. And I wanted to really show you in this workshop that it's not just a circle and you stamp inside of a circle and paste it on top. There's so many different things you can do. You can do an inset circle like we did today. You can do it on top, or you can just use the stamps and cut out the images. You don't have to even use a circle. So for this last card, part of what I love so much about it is we're not even using the circle. And there's just so many things you can do with this set. You can use it for birthdays. You can use it for just a thinking of you card, just a note card, just sending best wishes to someone. Lots of stuff you can do. All right, so let's go back to get our card. And what we're going to do here is we're going to take our cupcakes, kind of move them around, figure out which order you like them in. Maybe you want to try something different. I'll try it a little different today. And then go ahead and I'm going to use 2 dimensionals for each cupcake. Flip it over. Use one for the icing and one for the cupcake. And you can do them straight up and down, or you can make them, facing whatever direction you want. It's your card. It's whatever you think looks good. So I'll do this one. I'll face it the opposite direction just to kind of show you some variation. I like to do the middle one a little more straight up and down. It's like dancing cupcakes. I don't know, just very cheerful, I think. And we are so close to being done. The last thing we're going to do is we're going to stamp our happy birthday sentiment. And for this set, for this sentiment, I used a new die cutting set that is really fun. I'm not sure if you guys have had a chance to check it out yet. It is called our Nested Essentials die set, and it comes with a lot of really fun dies that all nest within each other. So for this one, I used the second flag, and I think personally it is easier to stamp and then die cut, but you could also die cut and then stamp. There's whichever way you like, but we're gonna go ahead and get our happy birthday sentiment. And once again, I opted to use Misty Moonlight. So you could use whatever color you like. That is what I'm gonna be using if you wanna follow along. So go ahead and get happy birthday. We're gonna get it inky. Just make sure you leave enough room so that you can, if you actually have the die, you can kind of just eyeball it a little bit. Just want to make sure that there's enough room in there. Or like I said, maybe you want to run this through the die machine first and then stamp afterwards. But either way, we're going to run this through the machine. We're going to get it glued down and we are done. Once you get it out of the machine, just pop it out. And then you have that beautifully embossed image. And then I did it the wrong way. Okay, we're gonna flip it over because there's no rules. So I guess we'll get to see both versions. So let's go ahead and just stamp the other side. We just make do, right? Paying attention. All right. Centering it. There we go. And then what I like to do for this one is I take a little bit of adhesive and I actually just put it right on the back of the side I'm not using. And then, where's my card? I just kind of slide it under the cupcake until it's where I want it. I like to try to get it straight so that it's like lined up on the top. And then I just press it down underneath my cupcake. And there you go. Our 7th and final card is done. I really hope you enjoyed doing this workshop with me. I'm really excited for the next workshop that's coming up. Stay tuned. There'll be more information on my website, tailormadewithnancy.blogspot.com. If you would like to make a purchase from Stampin' Up and support my business, please use the host code posted at the bottom of this video. If you'd like to email me, it's tailormadewithnancy@gmail.com. Until then, happy stamping. See you next time.